Feels good to be back.
It's a new semester. We've just gotten a year older, and that's what happened. But you're all here. You're ready to rock. You got food. We're good to go. So, folks, my name is Jim Love. This is Alan Halas, and we have been running the Hustling Sideways podcast for about 3.5 years.
Yep.
And about 2 years ago, we approached the 707 Hub because this is a place for entrepreneurship and sharing ideas and really getting better and learning lessons. And that's what we talk about in this show. We don't take ourselves very seriously. You'll catch on to that pretty soon. But well, maybe Alan takes himself seriously. I don't.
Yes, notoriously.
Notoriously serious,
No.
yeah. So we're excited to dive in, and it's a great opportunity. I feel like I'm proud.
Well, Jim, you should also explain real quick. Jim, you are a motivational.
Oh, I should tell you what I do, yeah. So I work at Manpower Group. I'm the director for Global Solutions there, and I'm also, I run my own speaking company. So I'm a keynote speaker for high school and college students. I speak about leadership. I've been doing that for about 10 years, and I do conferences in schools, and I love it. It's a great time, and so I grew both of those in conjunction, and that's kind of the genesis of what brought us here as podcasters.
Yeah. And then I'm a music writer. I write for Milwaukee by trade, by day. And then at night I also run my own music website called Breaking and Entering that has been documenting the Milwaukee music scene for the last 10 years. So we're excited to be here. We're excited to have this crowd for the first one. Thank you to the 707 Hub for having us. We also have an amazing guest today.
We do. And
I heard about that. I heard about amazing.
Well, to be determined.
We have an above average guest.
We have, yeah.
TBD, yeah.
You're really setting the scene. So we have Manny Lara. Manny is the director of HR for Ready Rebound and the co-founder of WorkShift. So go ahead and put your hands together. Yeah, we normally have a class track, but
we also closet hat all day. So.
That's right. That's
good. Rough day, man.
Yeah, you're good. That's all right. So Manny, tell us a little bit about your story to kind of get things started. What brought you ultimately to Marquette, and just a little bit of your kind of background growing up.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for being here. So yeah, I'm let's see, I went to Marquette in early 90s, so 92. I graduated in 96. I was actually, I got here on an ROTC scholarship, Navy ROTC. And it was great. I did the college experience. I lived off campus. I joined a fraternity. I was in ROTC. Had to take some of those rough classes, but I got through it. And then I went to the fleet for about 7 years. And I would say honestly that was probably the catalyst. People think of military as rigid and structured, but when you're in the middle of the ocean and like not everything's working out, you gotta get creative. And so, I think a lot of like my reasoning, deduction skills kind of came through that. But then, getting ready to get out, I had a chance to come back to Marquette and teach ROTC as an instructor. So, like the shoe is on the other foot, right? And so like, oh, I get it now. Like me looking at other students, so like I see where it's going from. But I got my master's in HR, and then I picked HR because what I did in the Navy was a lot of leadership development, coaching, and I felt like it was just a natural fit. And the other aspect is pursuing healthcare. So at the time, and still is, like healthcare is there's such a need and demand, and not just for practitioners, but people who are creative thinkers. I worked for some really amazing departments at Mayo Clinic, Aurora Healthcare, Ascension. But I was kind of not your typical HR person. I would find divisions that were doing cool stuff, and I would kind of hide with them and do stuff with them, and then you got to learn a lot of how do you innovate, how do you create, how do you take it from idea to execution. So I had a lot of exposure there, and then really just coming back from the Milwaukee area and staying in healthcare. But then COVID hit, and there was opportunity. I was really getting that entrepreneurial bug, and so it was like 3 companies I started actually. Just one of them was a food health company before COVID. We were getting ready to launch that, and then COVID hit, so we had to put that on the shelf. But WorkShift was another thing that came to me. My business partner was a food service person. This is before COVID, and she had looked at all the experiences she had with staffing and low staffing. And if anyone that works in food service in any way, you can sympathize. And I was the HR guy, so I'm like, hey, I think we can come up with something and that would help with staffing gaps. So we came up with WorkShift. It really was like the Uber for staffing. It was like, we have an open shift, we have people on the other end of that, and then we can fill those open positions. But then COVID hit, and then we really we struggled with what do we do next? Like the restaurants are closed, food service businesses closed, and so by chance we happened upon a need for staffing in healthcare because they needed people to do COVID testing. So we paired those two and said, hey, let's test the model, let's see if this works, and it did. And so we continued to move WorkShift through that period of time, and it's still out. We have a beta version. We are working in the community on this, but it's exciting stuff because it is like a roller coaster though. It's like you have the high highs, the low lows, and you persevere. And I think if anyone listens to some of the entrepreneurial podcasts,
like this one.
like this one,
yes.
yeah. Of course, you'll hear a lot. You'll hear a lot. You'll hear a lot about entrepreneurs who they go through a lot, and it's like. It really does build resilience so that you can deal with stuff like don't get too comfortable. You're having a good day or a good week, okay, something is gonna come up. And then how do you pivot and deal with that thing? And then you get creative, right? I think that, when your back's against the wall in certain situations, you get creative, you come up with new ideas, and then you see where it goes. So that's all I have to share.
No, that's a
That was
lot.
great.
That's a lot. So let's backtrack just a little bit and talk about right before pre-COVID, when you had a different kind of iteration of what would eventually become WorkShift. How long was that process of taking that from concept to development, and then of course before it's derailed?
That's a great question. So working in healthcare up to that point. Early in my career, one of the things that is interesting, what I do is I will catalog things, things that I come across. I kind of file them away. I'm like, that's a cool idea. And then when I run across something else, I'm like, hey, I wonder if that idea can connect with this idea. And so when I was in the healthcare system, we had, within the healthcare system, there was something called bid shift for nurses. So let's say an ICU unit or urgent care needed a nurse, they would put it on inside the hospital, and people would pick up those shifts. And so when my business partner approached me, he's like, hey, I have this idea, it's food service, restaurants. And in my mind, I said, that's bid shift, just on the external side. And, we can certainly do this. And, we determined that, hey, it's best to have them as contracted staff for the labor pool, and then work with restaurants to basically just sign up. And they don't pay anything, it's all free, but they pay when they fill shifts. And so that's how we make the money on the back end, so.
Sure. Okay. So that development process then was food focused, and then are we talking months? Is this years? What was?
Yeah, I would say the idea was the summer of 2019. Okay. And the thing that was the catalyst was the DNC, Democratic National Convention, was coming to Milwaukee the following summer. And so there was a lot of activity. We started hey, we gotta get this thing going. We pulled, some developers in, and people just thought the idea was cool, so they were willing to contribute. And even with the DNC coming, we had some headwind on there because people were like, hey, we're gonna need a lot of people the next summer. And so we moved quickly. I would say probably had our first version up by that late fall, right? So probably about 5, 6 months. And we were moving fast, and we were talking to people in the city, and they're like, yeah, this is a great idea. And then, we know what happens after that,
right.
So, yeah.
Everything just derails.
I'm curious, and I'm gonna backtrack even more, because I feel like there's been, when you were in the Navy, and the things that you learn, do you almost find it to be a leg up that you've experienced things that probably the majority of folks who haven't, and you're mapping it back to what did I do in a literal life or death situation? That's and how often does that come up where you're taking lessons from something that's very specific that you did it, which is amazing? Yeah,
no, I think that wow, this got louder. Holy cow. It was you don't think of it at the time. Obviously, you're going through a challenging situation, but what you're doing is you're kind of building that muscle of if this then that. We're doing a lot of reasoning. A lot of it was where does the enemy ship at? What course are they on? Let's plot that out and see whether all of a sudden they pop up, or where's that refueling ship? And so you just have to get really creative on like mapping it out, and then and also scenario planning. So like, what if this happens? What do we do there? So a lot of contingency planning. I think, you naturally go through that, and then when you're into like, a startup or even healthcare, challenging situations, you just start to, map that out, what could happen next, and you start to think contingencies. But, you're not gonna, it doesn't prevent you from acting, it just allows you to be more prepared, because nothing's gonna come out perfect. And that's the thing you learn in the military, is not everything works out perfectly, like you can have the best laid plan. And so I think that was probably one of the biggest lessons I learned, was like, plan for the best, but, or hope for the best, but plan for the worst. And if you're thinking that way, then you're not surprised. And then you can just be adaptive to it, so.
Did it give you space to be creative in a sense too, or almost like you're kind of like, these three things may not work? And because I think a lot of your journey so far has been seeing an idea, coming up with your own creative way to map it to a different idea. Like, does some of that extend to maybe some of the work that you did there too?
Yeah, because if you keep your mind open, you would see that other solution. Like, hey, but if you're just fixated on one thing, this is the only way we're going to do this, you're setting yourself up for failure, because you're not open to other ideas. And you're like, hey, I think we can go this way. And you take that chance, and and then see how it works out. And so, but it's also using reasoning about like what could be the worst that could happen on the situation. So yeah, I mean.
Sure. So 2020, COVID hits. The idea is about to launch, and clearly is not going to, right?
Yep.
What is that kind of, walk us through the whole kind of process of repivoting to healthcare, and then identifying that need, identifying that problem, and then ultimately coming up with that solution for it.
The cool thing about like entrepreneurs, certainly in this city, is they like to hang out together, right? And so, especially during COVID, like you're trying to find your tribe still, where's everyone at? And so this happened through like a connection that I had in the startup world space. So we were just sitting around a fire. He was working with another company. They were doing some like COVID testing, getting that off the ground. And so, he asked me how WorkShift's going. I'm like, we can't move it any further. He's like, what if, we need people, like, what if we could, put these things together? And I said, absolutely. And so, met with the founder, talked about our platform. He's like, yeah, we'll give it a shot. And so, I'm like working another job, I'm like the HR director for a clinic, and we're dealing with COVID stuff all the time. And so I'm doing that, like I'm working, and then at night I'm getting ready for the shift staff up for COVID testing the next day. And so, and this is like during the winter, and like you staff up 3 or 4 people, and you only need 2 because you knew somebody's gonna miss, right? Yeah. With the weather and all that. And so it was always like this, and they're calling me at work. I'm like, oh boy. So, but yeah. So you're trying to do both, but like it was a really thrilling, exciting, sometimes scary time, right? Because you're wanting to make sure that you're supplying enough people. They're relying on you. So, but you get through it, and then next thing you know, like, hey, we want more people. How we can get more? We want to work with you, keep working. We had potential to work in Hawaii with this group because they were at like this big resort, wanted to, all of a sudden have people tested every day. And we're getting ready for that. And then COVID started to wane a little bit. So we're like, okay, well, we'll just move back. So
scaling that business up as fast as you had to, because this was kind of a crisis situation, right? And you had something that solved the problem. So how did you kind of go about scaling out your business and finding new, I guess clients in this sense, but hospitals and healthcare networks that you could reach out to?
Yeah, I would say it was like, again, knowing people in the business. So I worked in healthcare, so it was like me making phone calls, like, hey, I worked here, and here. And so they loved the idea. We started working with other kind of smaller clinics and such. I'll also throw in another thing that I did during COVID that's not part of WorkShift. So, but WorkShift was going on. We actually, with another business partner, we started like outdoor movie theater. during COVID, because people, it's
Yeah.
called parking lot theater. We actually would find these parking lots that were empty, no one's driving around, so we contracted with this like big screen, production company, and people would stay in their cars, they would come to this parking lot, watch a drive-in movie, we'd have food bust in, kind of like car hop service, and that was something that happened during COVID as well. So.
Things we just have fun, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, we had families that were just so emotional, they couldn't get out of the house, but we provided a safe environment for them to bring their kids, watch the movie, stay in their bubble, and then leave. So we hosted it through the summer and into the fall. So
yeah. Are you somebody that has always kind of seen opportunities? Does that entrepreneurial mindset kind of always exist for you?
Yeah, it's a curse.
Seems like it. Yeah.
Blessing and a curse. Yes, I mean, I would say, it's always again, I catalog stuff, I think about, what if, and we just put it away. And then something comes along and it's like, hey, what if we could do this?
Yeah. Have you ever been afraid of trying that? I mean, I know that you may catalog, but you're like, what if this doesn't work? Has that ever set on you? And if it has, how do you get past that block?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I would say probably where you really got to find the environment that's going to be conducive to that. I've been in environments where it's like, nope, this is the way we do it. We don't deviate, and that's where it gets scary. If you're like, I have an idea, and then if you try it, and it doesn't work, then it's like, okay, well, you're on your way out the door. But maybe that's a good thing because it's not, it's not the place where where they're like, hey, we want ideas, we want people to bring things forward, we want them to be fearless. That was how my experience was at Mayo Clinic in Rochester. I worked with a group where, radiology group, where we developed 3D printing of anatomy. So the CT scans were digital, and this was new and novel. And we plugged those into 3D printers, and next thing you know, it's a patient's heart or their organ, and the surgeons could operate on those, or kind of look at them and evaluate. And it reduced their open time, reduced infections, and then we started to invite other hospitals to learn this process. But I was on that team, and I'm coming, hey, we got to come up with new compensation and job descriptions that never existed. So anyway, so I was part of that group too. So
sure. Now I do want to bring up a story that you told us before we even actually
off camera time here for a second.
Because like I said, you seem to be somebody that identifies an issue and is somebody that creates something that could possibly rectify that sort of thing, make life a little
easier.
It's a painful
story, yeah.
Bring it back to your college years.
Yeah, back to your time at Marquette.
So I'm a senior, it's 96, the internet's starting to kind of take off a little bit.
So
and,
no iPhones?
No iPhones, it was,
Jim, there was a world without the internet.
Only brick phones, no one's brick for them. We had a project, and as a business major, we had a project to develop a website for a service, right? And people had different ideas. And me and 3 other friends in the class were one of them, his mom was a manager in a restaurant, in the area. And so, what if we came up with a site where you could order food online, and they get an email, and they make it, and you just come by and pick it up, right? And so, great idea, everyone loved it, got an A. Then we graduated, and hey, never thought about it after that. But I was and then I looked it up way after, I'm when did online ordering come up? It was 2000. So we could have been billionaires.
4 years ahead.
What if this is the grand reveal? This is the creator of takeout.
Yes, but there's also you think about it, timing is important. Where are you in the ecosystem of for us was with WorkShift in healthcare during COVID, hugely needed, right? And even before COVID, the food service area. So timing is really important too, and I think that sometimes ideas are too soon, too new and novel. We certainly don't have to be first, we don't have to be last either. And one of the things that's important too that we found, even with WorkShift, is if somebody else is doing it, it means you're onto something. It means you're doing something that there's a need there, people are doing it, and you're modeling that as well. But I was just thinking about that, not to scare you away from doing something first, but also think about the timing, like, is it the right time? How do I push through that, et cetera, so, but,
Totally.
yeah, so that was, but the thing that also is important, like, when I was going to school, there was nothing like this. Nobody knew about entrepreneurship, nobody knew about startups, and so it wasn't like the teachers were like, hey, this is a terrific idea, let's get you to the 707 hub, let's talk to somebody, you know, and that wasn't on anyone's mind at the time. Now there is, thankfully, and, you know, people have that opportunity, so.
You know, one thing I want to go back to, you mentioned when you were starting WorkShift and working during the day, getting calls from people on this, you know, balancing, we talk about this a lot, the balancing act of like having a career and having a side passion. How do you do it? We have ways that we do it, and I mean, I'm sitting here and I have like 35 unread messages from my
I was
side.
gonna
That's
say,
like
I feel
a
my phone going off right
like
now.
we have to do it all the time, and I love it because like, you know, but it's tiring.
Yeah.
But what is your, you know, secret sauce to?
Yeah, I would say, you know, certainly, the best you can, like, what's your time to do certain work, right? For me, I know Saturday mornings, like, I'm more creative then, or something more, like, late night, I can't, I'm exhausted, right? My brain doesn't work. But, like, find your time where, like, hey, when should I work on this thing? And just start to kind of organize it that way. Things do pop up here and there, but I would say that, you know, just plan for that, but also, you know, I think about, like, what can I get done in this thing that allows me to work on this thing? So sometimes there are things that, like, you procrastinate, like, I don't want to do this one thing, or you're in a job, like, I don't want to do, like, just get it done, and then that's your motivation to work on the other fun stuff.
Yeah, so if you're a procrastinator, this is a good way to solve that problem. Is pick up
That
a
is,
side
that is
passion.
me, he is speaking
Yeah, that's
directly
right.
to me,
Yeah.
I am the procrastinator.
That felt personal, I think you're attacking that one, and here we are.
Absolutely. So one thing with WorkShift too is you have a co-founder, correct?
Correct.
So at what point did you decide that you needed somebody else to, you know, take this concept to reality? When did you decide, like, hey, I need to find somebody to work with, and how, like, the second part of that is how do you just, you know, decide what is right for a co-founder?
Yeah, I would say, like, we both had, like, my business partner she really was the one that brought the idea forward, and I said, hey, this is great, let's make this happen. I had the background of seeing this before. I said, we can make this happen, and, you know, seeing the model, and, you know, she had the experience in food service, and so, but then we brought on, like, you know, a developer and marketing person. I think we probably overstaffed initially, like, we weren't ready for that, because we didn't have that product fully built out. The other thing that was really important was, you know, you gotta find your strengths, like, who does what well. You know, I think I'm a pretty good networker, like, I connect with people, so I was gonna take that and kind of start talking to the businesses, making connections. She was great with sales, and she, you know, brought on, like, a contracting developer. So it's like, you can't do it all yourself. Like, you gotta figure out, what are my strengths, what am I good at? And sometimes the founder isn't as good as a CEO or in sales. So you just gotta know, like, you don't have to do everything yourself, but, like, be mindful of those things, and, yeah.
I love that, and I want to echo that, and it's interesting, like, not doing it yourself. I'm someone who, like, has my own thing, right, but I rely on a lot of people to help me get to where I want to be. Like, when I speak at schools, I rely on referrals, I rely on a friend helping me build a website. Like, while it's me doing the brand, the village behind me is immense, and I really pick and choose the folks that way. So it's a great point, and I think sometimes we feel overwhelmed. You know, I mean, it's hard to start something. You're never alone in doing it, and you know, it's called, like, a tribe. Like, find your tribe to develop, challenge you, and encourage you to move forward, because that is the way we get things done, and we really rely on each other a lot.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the other thing is, like, get out, like, meet people, talk about what you're working on, because you find all of a sudden you run into people that want to do the same thing, or, like, they want to support it. They have the same, like, kind of same interests. So I think the more people you can tell your story to, you know, talk with, or, you know, kind of go out there and meet, next thing you know, you've got a co-founder, or you got a teammate, or whatever it might be, that wants to help you grow that thing. So, yeah.
So the hard-hitting question: if you were starting a business today, what would be the first thing? You've got an idea, it's something that you're like, I I love this, I know I want to go with it.
Yeah.
What would be your first step of trying to kind of make this a reality?
Yeah, great question. I would say do your discovery, like ask questions about that problem. There's a common phrase of like fall in love with the problem, not the solution. Because you might have the solution in your head, like, hey, I got this thing, it's gonna solve it, but you may not appreciate the problem. Like, so fall in with the problem, ask questions about, does everyone else have the same kind of situation? And a lot of times we're solving for things that we are dealing with, or friends or family are dealing with. So, find out how common that problem is. And it could be a little different than what you thought, and then it just allows you to think a little bit more on solutioning. But yeah.
I love that, because I think we could find ourselves in the trap of being like, I got the thing now. It's
I
like,
do that all
what
the
are
time.
people struggling with?
Yes,
Yeah, I know
really
it
not,
is.
this
It's
is
a really
like-
good point. Yeah,
Yes.
I don't remember, that's new to me, I like that a lot.
For sure. So where do you kind of see things going in the next, maybe the immediate future for WorkShift?
Yeah, I would say, the platform is very unique, and we see, it's very functional. Like, it's not just, and my partner and I, we didn't start it just to make money, to try to make money, but yeah, whatever. But also, it wasn't just transactional, but how can we help people go into roles, try them out, learn a skill, and then we talk about even how do you chronicle that. I worked in HR for a long time. The things that we don't do very well is we don't document our skill sets along the way. We do it after the fact during performance reviews, or when you kind of recall what did I do, but there's nothing in the moment. I think WorkShift can do that. We want to continue to grow that around how do we create skills kind of enhancer for anyone. And so instead of you having to come up with a resume, you're already building it. It's happening, and it's also not happening by you, but the people you work for, because they can also provide insight on hey, so-and-so did great at this shift, we learned this, and this, and it's documented in the platform. The other thing is, this is a very, it's a marketplace. It could go into healthcare, it could go into IT, manufacturing, so, it's configurable, so we can change out the jobs. So we see it and just being, specific to, not just one industry, but others, so, yeah.
Awesome, really important last question. Murphy's or Caffrey's?
Murphy's, sorry, always.
That ruins things for you all.
Yeah, where does the room stand on Murphy's?
Yeah, raise your hand if you're Murphy's, or raise your hand if you're allowed to go to Murphy's. Raise your hand if not.
That's why I was. That's why I was Murphy's, because I could get in there.
That helps.
Sorry.
That part was not sponsored.
Back then,
Just so
not now. Back
Views expressed in the last 5 minutes.
That's great.
So Manny, if people want to get in touch with you and
Yeah.
learn more about what you're working on and
Yeah.
kind of grow to this, where's the best place to do it?
Yeah, I would say LinkedIn, Manny Lara. I think I'm the only Manny Lara in the city. I chase everyone else that's even close to that name. I chase them on this. Okay. No, I got a lot of connections. Again, I do kind of float in and out of the startup community. There's a few startup groups here in Milwaukee that are terrific networking opportunities. People with really creative ideas. And next month, and I'll share it through Patrick, but is Wisconsin Tech Month. So a variety of different events throughout the city, hosted by a number of different groups. So the opportunity to meet other entrepreneurs or people who are interested in things like that. So yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
Well, Manny, thank you for being here and
Yeah.
joining us today. We hope you all enjoyed it. We're going to switch into a Q&A session.
Yes, we are. But before we do that, thank you guys also for everybody that's watching and listening at home.
Yes.
We are the Hustle and Sideways podcast. You can get us wherever you get your podcasts. You can subscribe to us. We are on Facebook, we're on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter,
Yes.
and I think that's all.
That's it. That's where we're at, which is
Anyway,
all
we're
the
all
things.
those places.
All the things, yeah.
Thank you so much. We will see you next time on the podcast. Jim.
Keep on hustling.